Hello, YouTube or BookTube. This is Johnny. Thought I'd make a video since my wife just left to go visit an elderly lady, a friend of hers. And I went to, yesterday, I got really brave. And I had to go to the credit union. And I went to thrift stores to look for used books to add to the book chaos that you saw in my last video. Books. And so I just went around to thrift stores just around where we live here in Holland, Michigan. And I thought I'd show them to you so I can put them down into the chaos downstairs in the lower level. Where am I going to put them? I don't know. But first of all, it is September the 19th, 2018. It is a Wednesday morning here in West Michigan. It is gray outside. We turned off the central air system. And because it's cool today, it's supposed to rain this afternoon. It's gray right now. We have all the doors open in the windows, and my wife really likes fresh air. She doesn't like the house being closed up. So that's why I got my sweats on, because it's cold in here, but my wife says it feels good after the hot weather. So I'm sitting here drinking coffee on September the 19th. It is a Wednesday. It is 11:13 late Wednesday morning. I'm on page 766 in my 2018 diary. I am reading this morning, as far as my Monday reads, The Rise of Reform System, The Intellectual Heritage of William Ames by Jan van Vliet, Studies in Christian History and Thought. I have these next to me, a sketch of Christian's Catechism by William Ames. He lived from 1576 to 1633. I said in one of my videos that he was British, but he was a nonconformist. He was in the Puritan tradition, and he was not permitted to minister in England, and so he fled, and he lived in exile in the Netherlands and the Dutch Republic back there in the 17th century, and he had planned to come to America with his wife and children, but he died. But anyway, this is a sketch of Christian Catechism. I think it's on the Heidelberg Catechism, if I remember correctly. And then I mentioned that when I was in seminary, Jackson, Mississippi, Reformed Theological Seminary back in the 80s, I had a church history professor, Dr. Freund. I always remember Dr. Freund because he smoked a pipe, and you go into his office and it just reeked with this sweet smell of pipe tobacco. And he would sit behind his desk. He had gray hair and a goatee, and he wore glasses. He was very friendly. I took a lot of classes with Dr. Freund, and like I said, he sold outside his office door be a little bookcase, and he'd sell Christian books, and I'd buy them. I'd look through them. And this is when I bought The Marrow of Theology by William Ames, translated with an introduction by John Dykstra Housden. Doesn't smell like pipe smoke, but I bought other books from him when I was in seminary. Dr. Freund passed away a couple of years ago, and he was really an interesting fellow. So I'm reading that for my morning devotions, and now I'll show you the books that I found at thrift stores yesterday. So this is like a thrift store haul. I found a book by Ben Withington III, What Have They Done with Jesus Beyond Strange Theories and Bad History, Why We Can Trust God, Trust the Bible. I have a lot of books by Ben Witherington III. He is one of my favorite New Testament scholars. He's written commentaries and he's written books on historical Jesus. Just goes on and on. Hermeneutics. Just goes on and on. I really like Ben Witherington. He's not in he's evangelical, but he's not in the Calvinistic camp or Reformed. But I really, one of my favorite commentaries by Ben Witherington is on the Epistle to the Galatians in the New Testament. And so I found a book by Ben Witherington III I didn't have in our library. And then I found a book by a woman. I have another book of hers in our library. What was that? It was called... Sexual Anarchy, Gender and Culture at the Fin de Sieck. That's a book I have by her. But this is a book that's kind of famous by Elaine Showalter, a jury of her peers, American women writers from Anne Banstreet to Annie Proulx. This is I was really pleased to find this. It's a major work in women's studies and literary criticism. So I found that. And this is a book I found at a thrift store, The Old Ways, A Journey on Foot. It's like travel writing, nature writing. This is by Robert McFarlane. And it got all kinds of rave reviews by Rick Bass, who I collect. He writes on nature and he's written novels and he writes about the West. And anyway, all the people in the back here who praise the book, I admire their writings, and I never heard of this, but it's interesting that John Kerry, who I'm reading his memoir right now, he recommends the book. So anyway, it's kind of like, it just says here in the flap here, an exquisitely written book, an immediate bestseller in England. Robert McFarlane sets off from his Cambridge home to follow the ancient tracks, holloways, drove roads, and sea paths that form part of the vast network of routes that crisscross the British landscape and its waters, connecting them to the continents beyond. The result is an immersive, enthralling exploration of the ghosts and voices that haunt old paths, of the stories of our tracks keep and tell, of the pilgrimage and ritual. It just sounded really interesting. Then I found a biography on Fidel Castro. I like biographies. I collect biographies. And this one, I don't have any biography of Fidel Castro. And he's always been an interesting person, something I like to know more about someday. So this is a biography of Fidel Castro by Robert E. Quirk. So this came out in 1993. It looks pretty exhaustive. And then I found a very famous book on economics, which we've all heard about in college, The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. And then this book, Colonialism and Its Forms of Knowledge, the British in India. I've always been kind of interested in the British Empire and their occupation of India, and that, so I found that. And then I found A History of Russian Thought from the Enlightenment to Marxism by Andrzej Waskiewski. I can't pronounce it, but this is translated out of Polish by Heidi Andrews Ruskek, Stanford University Press. It smells really moldy. Ugh. Ugh. And then I found this American History Desk Reference, New York Public Library American History Desk Reference. I have another one of these, but this is just on American history. It's just keep by my main computer. I like them. I like reading about American history, and they're just standard reference. So I got that. And then this is a book on it's called Naming Nature, The Clash Between Instinct and Science by Carol Cusack-Yoon. She goes into how botanists, how they name species like birds and plants, and the whole science of naming things in the natural world. But there's a lot of discussion in here on birds, birds, and I really like reading about birds, so I got the book. And then this book by Franciscus Fukuyama, The Origins of Political Order. It was only $2. It looked interesting. I come across his name a lot in my reading, so I bought that. So those are the used books I bought at local thrift stores. I haven't shown you the books I got at the Book Nook, the library used bookstore. I'll get around to that someday, but I just want to get these out of the way, put them down on the lower level, getting them out of my sight. That lower level, I'm going to have to really do something about that. You've seen what a mess it is down there in that last video. So yeah, this morning I'm drinking coffee, writing in my diary, reading William Ames, The Rise of Reform System, The Intellectual Heritage of William Ames. Just going through existence, just flowing along, drifting in the howling wasteland. So, last night I was just going to film a little bit of my main study. I don't know if you're like me, but I like looking at photos of writers' studies or painters' studios. I always wonder, where they write, and I just find that interesting, where creative people do what they do. And I know that I've read over the history of writers that they write in all different kinds of places. But I always like looking at writers and where they write, painters and where they paint, and where they do their creative work. So my study is where I don't, most of my writing I do right here in the dining room. I go in my study. I was more in my study when our kids were growing up. I come home from work, I had a stereo in there, and I had bookshelves, and I didn't have as many books as I have now when our kids were growing up. I had mostly Christian books, but now I have the whole house, the downstairs. My wife won't allow me to fill up the first floor full of books, even though there are books everywhere. But I like studies. I'm always curious about people who are writers or ministers or professors or teachers, what their offices or their studies look like, and what is on the bookshelves, or what's on their desk, or what's around them. I like looking at libraries, people's libraries, and I know people in BookTube and YouTube have the same interests as I do, so that's why I did it. So anyway, I'm just rambling here. It is 11:25 now here on September the 19th. Here in West Michigan, it is, like I said, it's in the 70s. It's gray. I'm drinking coffee. Yeah. So I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the new subscribers. And do pray that you're doing well this day. And until next time, bye.